Hi, I'm Elizabeth and I'm a trainee clinical psychologist. I came into Kintsugi radio show to come and complete the service evaluation, and today I'll be presenting our findings.
Hi, I'm Amy. I'm also a trainee clinical psychologist, and I'll be doing the same as Elizabeth, where we came and did the service evaluation together, and we'll show you what we found, which we're really excited about.
Kintsugi radio.
Okay.
Okay. So what we know about the service and presenters, and thinking about co-developing actually the project itself. We looked specifically about on the radio show, and we're thinking about actually creating the idea of the radio show, which is created and presented as part of Kintsugi, but also part of a wider community. When we initially approached Layla, and we're very much aware that actually as we approached Layla, it was going to be a service evaluation that would be co-developed with the presenters. So it wasn't a case of us just coming in and saying this is what we're going to do, and you have to come alongside us and do it with us. We were very much aware that we had to, first of all, introduce ourselves to presenters, so that they feel comfortable with us and know who we are, but also so that they have a better understanding of actually why we're doing the service evaluation. And that's what we did from the month of September, from March 2022.
3. Yeah.
23, yeah, March 2023, up till essentially July. So we would come in every month and just sit in the little corner and just kind of watch the presenters present the radio show.
We definitely got kind of roped into some, which was quite fun as well, which is cool.
Yeah.
We also had meetings with Eric and Layla as well, so we decided between us what would be kind of most valuable, and that was definitely with the perspective of the presenters as well, but also the perspective of LeadWorks too. So what would be most helpful for us to look at, what we could do within our roles as kind of training psychologists and our course. So that was really good to kind of have those discussions, and I think through that it was a lot of building relationships as well.
As well as thinking about adjustments as well.
Yeah.
So thinking about actually how do we adjust in terms of when we've got information sheet that we want to give to presenters, how do we adjust it so that actually it's not too wordy, it's not too jargon-led, so that actually they're able to understand what it is that we want them to do or what we're asking of them. But also thinking about actually, we're quite aware that actually there needs to be accessible communication, because each presenter is communicating in different ways. So what we were thinking about is when we were going to complete the interviews with the presenters, how do we ensure that it's done in an accessible way and actually matches the communication of each presenter.
Yes, I think those were kind of quite nice. I quite enjoyed them, quite nice creative discussions to have. A bit of feedback on kind of like wording, materials, like Elizabeth said, and how we can be kind of inclusive and basically enable the presenters to be at their best when working with two new people coming in asking for quite a lot. So that was a process to go through, but I quite enjoyed that process. So our kind of overall aims that we agreed were to explore the impact hosting a radio show has on the well-being and communication of presenters. Looking at kind of the radio show as a means of kind of that social kind of activity, but also what are the kind of other outputs, what other things does it kind of give and bring to presenters' lives.
Should we go to the next slide?
Yes, sorry, I forgot to do that. So yeah, as you can see, I've just set my point there, which is great. So we, as we said on the previous slide, we came in, got to know presenters. I think we got quite good feedback from being there and really, really warmly welcomed, which we really, really appreciated. It was really nice. Got a bit of experience ourselves of doing the radio and kind of how kind of nerve-wracking it can be. Yeah, so that was an experience. So that was quite nice to do. So we had a bit of an idea going in and kind of asking the questions. So in the end, we conducted 6 interviews. 5 of which were in person, 1 of which was online. All presenters had a choice of where and how they did the interviews, which we felt was really important. and we managed to fit these in over a 3-week period, so it was a lot of interviews quite fast, but we got them all, which is great. So then we took the data away, we transcribed the interviews, so we wrote them all out, and then individually we analysed them. So we used a means called thematic analysis, where we're kind of looking at key themes kind of across everybody's data, and kind of went through a process first separately, then came together to make sure what we were kind of finding was that similar, was that different, then came together with the two of us and Layla, and we kind of managed to generate some kind of key themes and sub-themes which we'll go on to now.
And I guess in terms of what we mean by key themes is this idea that actually, if, for example, if I ask you a question, how's your day been? And if everyone says, oh, it's been great, it's been fine, it's been lovely, a key theme that would arise would be actually, it's been a fine day. So that's what we mean by key themes. It's almost like, what is it that everyone keeps saying? And what keeps coming up each time we ask a question. Some of the questions that we asked presenters, we asked them 10 questions in total, I believe. One of the questions, for example, was, tell us about how being part of the radio show has affected your life. Another question was, how has the radio show changed your mental well-being? So each presenter was given, every presenter was given the same question with the same prompts. And then we recorded it, and then we found that actually if the presenters kept saying the same things such as, oh, it's been great, oh, my communication has been improved. So presenter 1 said my communication has been improved, presenter 2 said my communication has been improved. That's what we mean by key themes. That's what we can see actually. There's a consensus in terms of actually this difference has been seen. Is that? Yeah, I'm just really aware that we don't want to use too much jargons and make sure that that you guys get what we're saying.
Yes. That makes sense.
I'm thinking about some of the next slide is really small. What we call in terms of generally, we interviewed, the age group that we interviewed between was, so 40% of the participants were between the age of 18 to 24, 20% was between the age of 45 to 49, and similarly, there was another 20% which was between the age of 40 and 44. Out of all the participants, we interviewed 80% male, and it was 10% female. And also to say that in the statistics, not everyone's data was put in this, in the statistics, so it might be, in demographic, thank you. So it might be a bit, it's not quite equal in some sense in terms of the data. And in terms of thinking about actually the presenters and who we interviewed, 100% of the participants identified as having a disability. And none of the participants identified as being in paid employment. 3 of the participants identified as being in voluntary employment, and 2 of the participants identified as being either paid or voluntary employment. So there was a general, I guess there was a kind of some aspects of diversity within the demographic of presenters, but there was a common aspect that actually all the presenters identified as having a disability. And thinking about the themes that we found, so we found 6 themes in total. So 6 themes that we found was the sense of actually communication was really important for the participants. A sense of belonging, being able to have a laugh, being able to grow in confidence, and having a sense of ownership and purpose, and learning and development, were all themes that arose as a result from our findings. And we'll go into each of this in detail in a few minutes.
Yeah. So, quite a big spread of the overall themes, and go on to the next slide. So the first theme was about communication, which was quite a big theme. It took quite a while to kind of filter it down. So within kind of the big kind of overall kind of themes or commonalities that were said is different kind of things that might be kind of categorised under that. So one thing we did, which as you can see, a lot of the titles are in quotes, so we thought to get the presenters' voices across, we really wanted to take quotes directly from what they had said, so that can bring their voice into it, like, and that can be at the centre. So we've done that as much as we can, as much as it made sense. So the first one is that saying it makes you have your own voice. So participants found it really important to know that they were being heard. And we got a few quotes there, so read a few out. So I do get a bit of a buzz when I sort of find like people are listening and tuning in.
Sorry.
And being a presenter, it makes you have your own voice, which I found were really powerful. So the importance of kind of being heard and being listened to.
And you've used pseudonyms, is that right?
We have, yes.
Which is great.
Yeah, we use pseudonyms, so I think we also gave the presenters an opportunity to choose their own pseudonyms if they wanted. So we've got some that were chosen and some who opted to have us choose them for them, which was a really kind of nice way to bring themselves in. We got some great names, much more creative than us.
It's Lucy's middle name.
Shush.
Anonymity out the window.
The subtlety in spelling it wrong was like...
It's probably like our interpretation.
I think
Yeah. Should I figure this slide then?
go ahead.
So next one is it's been good for the communication side, definitely. So another thing that came out is it's really supported participants with their communication skills, and including getting general points across clearly and interacting with others. So we've got a quote from Clarence here saying, like in terms of the radio, I'm not taking sasses or I'm twisting, and I'm able to get my points across rather than taking pauses, so that getting those kind of communication skills, getting what's communicated across clearly is what we kind of found from it. There are more quotes in the full report as well.
That's a really interesting finding. I
That
think,
really
isn't
is.
It helps with communication skills in a practical way around clarity and as well as feeling heard. That's really helpful.
And there are some other quotes in there around kind of like taking turns and bouncing off each other as well, and kind of those real bits, like presenters really took kind of those things away and mentioned them in the interviews with us.
That's really powerful as well, isn't it? Because turn taking is often something people with autism struggle with in conversation, so that's a really interesting finding as well.
I think we've actually included that in another section, interestingly, as well.
Yeah.
So kind of there's a dual purpose to that as well, dual up. So talking about what you love, I think this was mentioned quite strongly of it's a great opportunity to be able to communicate and have space to communicate about what people are really passionate about and kind of give them the choice. So being a presenter is a really good thing. You can just talk about what you love and people are listening. And the last kind of something we have there is more confidence and at ease of speaking with people. And I think one thing that we noticed is that presenters maybe struggle to initially recognise this in themselves, but when asked what other people thought, they're able to kind of say that other people have noticed my confidence change, which was quite an interesting take on it. So you've got the quote there, Dad, said that I was not talkative at all before. He said I was not talkative on the radio until a couple of shows, and then it just sort of grew from there really. So it was really nice to kind of have those other perspectives in that too. Any questions around that theme? Okay, we'll move on to the next one. I'll go to you.
And then the second thing that we found was that this idea of actually being part of a community, and being part of a community both within the Kintsugi radio show as well as the wider Kintsugi community. So participants reported developing a sense of belonging and connection both with their co-presenters and with the local community. And it's a sense that the radio show, Kintsugi radio show, there's a real sense that people came, the presenters came and they were able to have a laugh and just socialise and be with one another in a way whereby actually there was connection and community. So we've got a quote from Susan which says, everyone just has a laugh and all the clients are easygoing. And yeah, I just think like generally like community and the laid back feeling about the place. So there's something about actually thinking about that community sense that people really like, the ability that actually Kintsugi radio show was quite laid back and chilled, and that there was no expectations in some sense. It wasn't so structured and rigid, and that actually that gave them the ability to have fun and to be together and be themselves amongst themselves and the co-presenters as presenters. And then we've got Monroe, who says, it kind of gives me somewhere to go each week and gives me people to talk to really. It's like that sense of connection really, like say my presenter and co-host and things like that, people to talk to, things like that, really it does. And we know we have a good laugh all the time. So there's that sense that actually on a weekly basis, I know I'm going to go see Susan, I'm going to go see Clarence, I'm going to see this community that I've developed, and it's somewhere for me to go. That's what a real sense that some of the presenters felt. Actually, I've got something to do on a weekly basis. I've got a group I see on a daily basis, and I know that I'm going to enjoy it. And then we've got AMT, who talks about actually, I really like the online sort of community of it really, and getting to know who listens in. So you've got the community within the Kintsugi itself, but also thinking about that community outside of the radio show, so those who are listening in. And that in itself was a sense of community that actually wasn't just the in-person sense of actual interaction, but also knowing that there's a virtual community that also listen into the radio show. Especially if you think about actually fans, so the fan base of the presenters, that actually, you know, I'm going to present a show on a weekly basis and I'm going to have my fans listen. And I'm doing this for my fan, and that sense also there's a sense of community that you know that actually, yeah, it's important.
It's very important.
Yeah, and that in itself is a sense of belonging and a sense of actually connection, that goes beyond the one-to-one interaction, also the wider community, both virtually and in person. And then we've got another quote from Susan which says, "I feel like I'm more part of something, and I get to know a lot more people ever since being here. I'm quite involved in the music scene anyway, so I'm sort of seeing people here, and I was seeing other groups that I know, I'm like, oh hello, so it's here. I'm recognising people a bit more just by doing this." And I guess from doing the interviews with Susan, what I guess she was referring to was this idea that actually she knows she comes in to come and do the radio show within Kintsugi, but she also knows that she'll see people that she knows in the cafe that necessarily aren't part of the radio show, but might be part of the local music scene, or might be part of other groups that she's involved in, but she knows there's a sense of actually, Leadworks itself is a community hub whereby actually people can link in with one another.
That's so interesting, because I think we were curious about whether that was the case for the radio presenters, but we weren't sure about how connected they felt to the rest of Leadworks or how much they benefited from that. So that's really interesting to hear that's come out.
Yeah, and for some, another presenter talks about actually, sometimes it's just a case of saying hello to people and then you know that
nothing more than that.
Yes. And that in itself is an improvement, whereby when we first started in the radio show, it was kind of in and out. But now it's a case of, oh, hello, and they know they're going to say regular face or familiar face. So it isn't just about actually just building community within the radio show, but also within the Leadworks hub itself.
Yeah, I think also that it's like the kind of social opportunity and kind of have like just coming in to do something is so significant within like the social communication event of the week. So all those little interactions are super important.
And also I think about actually there's also something about Leadworks and people in Leadworks provide the space. So we have a presenter who talks about actually coming to Leadworks is the only time that people will take to speak to him using his accessible communication. So normally people will speak to his support worker, but coming to Leadworks, it was a case of actually he could communicate with them directly through his augmented device, and that was one of the only opportunities that he had for people to actually interact with him on a one-to-one basis without interacting through the support with the carer. So it's that case of improving social communication, but also a sense of community. Yeah.
And was that with sort of Kintsugi radio staff, or was that with wider Leadworks?
Wider.
That's
So
really
yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
I think it's probably, I think it was both, so that within the communication bit within this kind of overlapped into a lot of themes kind of interlink and overlap. And they, but a lot of it was his like, I come in, I recognise people behind the bar in the cafe, I say hello, they say hello to me, and that just kind of like...
Just that little thing makes a difference, that people say hi.
It's
acknowledge them.
Yeah. It's useful for us to know that as thinking of with the Leadworks hat on as well, isn't it? That having a community or a staff group or volunteer group or that approach for the public, that you know, taking time to communicate properly with people and value people is important. That's really really helpful.
So our next thing, which we've already kind of linked into a little bit, is we get to have a laugh. So nearly all of the participants identified the central, like the importance of like fun and enjoyment of the radio show, and the ability to have a laugh, which kind of factored into kind of like participants' well-being. We're going between kind of presenters and participants here. We mean the same thing, we'll try and say presenters, because that's what, just to catch myself on that. So we kind of found kind of two kind of themes under this large theme. So participants kind of presenters looking forward to attending, the enjoyment, sense of happiness it's creates for hosting the show. So you've got a quote here of, with the radio, we just sit, we have a laugh really, we pick songs, things like that. We talk about what we love, and we are passionate about things like that. It gives me something to look forward to really. It's kind of like, I get to see Clarence season, we get to have a laugh on the show, and that's the output I have from that. So it's the coming and the being and the doing is kind of shared in connections. The sense of fun is really really key, and that's only one of the quotes. There are a few more in the report as well.
So we've picked out specific. Sorry to
I just said I've read them and it's lovely.
We picked out specific.
I'm emotional.
So there are more quotes in the report, and also if you wanted the transcript, we can make sure it's anonymised as well and send you the transcript. I think we should, as long as we anonymise it.
Brilliant. Thank you. That would be really helpful.
Could you send me a copy and I'll put it on the DJ's WhatsApp group so they can read? Brilliant.
So the argument that we have a laugh is it improves my mood and confidence. So from this, like presenters were noticing a change in well-being. And using kind of the mediums of radio to do that. So ANT said that it's just that I find music's pretty healing in itself. So in a good way to switch off in some ways. So to kind of come and have space to kind of do something that's found to be quite healing as well. And Susan says, just a bit more of like routine in my life. This does give me like motivation to do something, and that does help my mental health. I think knowing that I'm getting up and getting out and seeing other people definitely improves my mood and my confidence. So again, having that purpose, a place to go, that's also a really positive and fun experience is really, really valuable to presenters.
And then the next thing that we found was actually a growth in confidence. So participants / presenters experience an increase in confidence as a result of the radio show. And when we're thinking about confidence, we're talking about confidence in terms of confidence in the ability to communicate and express themselves and express their interests as well, particularly. And there's a sense of actually growing confidence and also ability to interact with others that maybe they normally wouldn't interact with, or they normally that kind of hi and bye or in and out has now become a bit more, it's not so much in and out, it's more of a hi, how are you doing? Going to the radio show, come out and maybe confidence and actually still able to communicate with others. Because actually there's a space that's been created for that community and that sense of communication. So we've got quite from ANT, we talked about, people often say that when I'm on the radio show, my confidence suddenly goes up and I'm a completely different person. So it's a way of sort of in a different way, it does sort of work in a different way quite often I find. So there's a sense that actually by presenting the radio show and hosting the radio show, that in itself increases the confidence of presenters.
This is sort of for the recording, and hopefully it'll be picked up. This is Gavin talking. I started doing radio at 14 for exactly that reason, because I was a scared, challenged, bullied little boy, and hiding behind a microphone made me be a different person and gave me confidence, and so I can so relate to that, and I still to this day relate to that, and I hope that we can continue to help any person that feels like that, for you to feel the person that you wish to be, just with a microphone and some headphones.
Yeah. And I think there is something about actually with just a microphone and headphones, you're able to communicate and talk about expressing your interest, express yourself and talk about your interest without any judgment, without any interruptions, and you can talk about it freely, but also there's something about other people being interested and wanting to hear what you're saying, and that actually, and it's not just about the presenting, but also the time it takes to go and prepare for that show.
Absolutely.
That in itself grows the individual's confidence, and that actually.
I will jump in again there. That's one of the things that I do really enjoy witnessing with the presenters that we work with, is the effort that's put in beforehand. So it's not just the hour in the studio, it's the planning of the shows and the curating of the music, and that can take maybe 3 hours for the hour in the studio. And my hope is that this project gives our presenters a focus for many more hours than just coming in to do that 1 hour show.
Thank you. And we've got another quote from Susan which talks about, I think, definitely people think that I've got more confidence in what I'm doing now, and I'm fitting in well and getting more comfortable with things. So it's that confidence in themselves, but also confidence in the ability to navigate the hosting, so the technical skills of actually hosting a radio show or preparing, for your show, and being more comfortable in the ability to host or in the ability to produce. So I think there was one presenter who was also a producer and works in the background. So actually with time, that presenter grew in their confidence to actually effectively run the show and work in the background and develop their technical radio skills. Similarly, we've got a quote from A&T who talks about, I know people have said that I've sort of grown in confidence. I think when the lights go, when the go lights go, like metaphorically goes on, I think I just really get into it. So there's a sense of actually, being embodied and just getting lost in that, and just in that host and that show, and a real sense of confidence growing as a result.
It's a really great metaphor, though, isn't it? Because there was, I don't know if there still is, but there was a studio like on air, wasn't there? That used to show that.
I think one thing kind of like within the scene that we found quite interesting is the confidence we found to be quite solely related to the radio show itself, and presenters didn't really kind of reflect that their confidence had grown outside of it, even though other people might have noticed it, but it was a lot talking about the confidence of the radio themselves. I think that's kind of like something we might not know, but might not have quite picked up on, is how far the confidence kind of reaches outside, or how if presenters identify that or not. So it'd be fun to find that out in maybe something further.
Just more trainings with
it. So the next theme, so it's 5 out of 6, so we're nearly there. Is we took a while to come up with a name for this one, but we went with ownership and purpose. And so this was about presenters highlighting the experience of having a sense of independence, pride and purpose as a result of hosting the radio show. So again, kind of bringing in that flexibility and autonomy. So the first kind of heading is, you can say how you want your show to be. So the importance of having that sense of control. I don't know why I'm speaking, A&T's a brilliant quote here, so I'll just read that. Having that sense of control of knowing you've chosen the music, and of knowing there's going to be at least one thing that I really like. So having that choice and autonomy and power over that. Another one was I've done my good deed for the day. So presenters reported experiencing kind of sense of pride from hosting a radio show, and a great quote from Clarence here is researcher asked me, what's your favourite thing about being a radio presenter? Clarence saying you can be saying that you are a radio presenter, and a huge kind of sense of pride in what people do. I think that came across all interviews of, like I said, the time taken to put in, but this.
So the identity is a radio presenter, that gives people a lot of pride. And that's really cool.
Which is great. So the next one is I get a bit of a boost. So the experience, the sense of kind of achievement in organising and presenting the shows. One Rose says that it makes me feel I'm organising the whole thing. It makes me feel like I'm doing kind of piece of artwork really, which kind of brings in kind of the creativity as well. I think that's kind of one thing that we're trying to get across in the theme. I think that would be more about creativity, but having the opportunity to do that. And the last one is it's given me a purpose. So hosting a radio show was seen as being really, really purposeful and meaningful. It's given me a purpose as well, I think, from Jamie there. From Anne, in some ways I think it's sort of helped me pursue a slight dream of kind of being able to present a radio show and kind of having maybe unfinished business from a previous radio show that this project's been able to do.
Okay, I guess we don't know what our presenters feel like about being disabled or as a disabled person in society. But we do know research says that lots of disabled people don't get lots of opportunities for ownership or purpose often in their life, so this feels really powerful in that context. I'd be curious about whether our presenters would link it to that, but I think that's really interesting from what we know about general research about being disabled.
I think something that was a highlight of actually Kintsugi radio show was the fact that the presenters can have free reign of what they do and present accordingly, whatever they wanted to do.
It's their show.
I think that's something that quite a few presenters said that actually they really enjoyed. The aspect of being having that laugh, I've been able to have a laugh and have fun, but also the aspect of actually just that creative freedom and to present whatever they wanted to present.
I was just thinking, there aren't always many opportunities in lots of people's lives to have total ownership over something like that. I was thinking, when do I get to do that? That's really interesting.
Cool. And the last theme that we found was a theme about learning and development. So being involved in the radio show gave presenters the opportunity to learn about what it was like and what it is like to be involved in creating a radio show and in developing the radio skills. So for example, with the sub-theme that emerged was the idea of it's going to be a nice skill set to gain. So participants highlighted development in their radio skills since being involved in a radio show. So actually the technical skill of hosting or being a presenter, of actually should I talk now or should I not talk, is the mic on, is the music going to play, that aspect was a skill that actually presenters valued and also were able to gain and developing. So we've got a quote from Susan which talks about, I've been talking more on the shows, obviously not today's one, but other ones, I've been more interactive and started asking people questions on the shows and stuff. So that's a new thing that I've tried, and in general, my skills are gradually increasing. So I'm doing extra bits in the shows in terms of production. So Susan was doing more in terms of producing the radio shows, but also thinking about actually hosting radio shows as well. So she was also able to ask questions of other presenters, and that in itself is a skill, the idea that actually when should I talk, when are you going to finish talking, what question should I ask you. So those were some of the skills that Susan itself was able to say that she developed. And And another sub-theme that arose was this idea of it shows me to adapt when I need to. When presenting radio shows, things don't always go as planned. Presenters are aware when things happen. Presenters are aware when this happens and develops means of coping and adapting in these moments. Excuse me. So thinking about actually when things go unexpected and unplanned, and it's the ability to think on your feet and problem solve, and particularly when actually people can't see you. You know, if the music is not playing, people can't, you know, if you're hosting a radio show, people don't know that the music is not playing or there's a technical difficulty. So how do you say that, or how do you make a jest about it? So actually the ability to problem solve in the moment and communicate in a way that might be light-hearted, or in a way that actually that allows you to not be completely thrown off the set that you've created. And so we've got a quote from A&T. So she talks about, I think one time I had a power cut in the middle of my show. So that was unfortunate. My show was still intact. So fortunately the anxiety was short-lived. Sometimes being spontaneous isn't quite as easy when I like to know what things are going on. But it's shown me to adapt when I need to. And I think this is quite a powerful quote in terms of, especially when we think about some of the presenters being from a neurodiverse community, that actually sometimes it's really hard when you're neurodivergent. Actually, it's really hard to be spontaneous. It's really hard for your plan to go out of the window. And actually, being part of the radio show has allowed the presenters to be able to deal with problem solving those moments. And that A&T talks about actually she felt anxious in that moment, but it was short-lived. And also there was something about actually presenters but also felt quite supported in those moments, that actually they felt supported and contained, and that actually it might go wrong, but at least I know there's someone there that's going to help. So having supportive co-hosts or supportive producers was also something that was highlighted within the result.
For me, I think that's so interesting because one of the, critiques that we've had about LeadWorks as a space, and sometimes of Kintsugi, particularly for autistic people, is that the environment is a bit too chaotic, or it's a bit too unpredictable. The noise is interesting, the coffee machine goes off, sometimes there's kids' toys around, there's people in the space.
My daughter came here once and wouldn't come back.
And we sometimes have that kind of feedback, but whilst there is that feedback and it's obviously valid, sometimes it comes directly from people, as Gavin said, but often it comes from professionals who are worried about how that might be for autistic people. But I think a lot of our experiences here, and it's interesting it's come out, is that having a slightly unpredictable environment sometimes is really great ground for growth and skill development.
Yes.
And actually people being able to build the confidence in being able to cope with things being a bit more unexpected and there's a bit more like the real world rather than a sort of slightly more sanitised service. It's easier to maybe transition into in the first place. And I think my belief is that can be really helpful for people, but it's really interesting that kind of learning to adapt to is something that people have valued.
And then thinking about the recommendations, so these are the recommendations that came out of the report in itself. I'll do the first point. So there was this idea of actually expanding the publicity of Kintsugi radio show. So what came out across a few presenters was this notion that actually the presenters said that they work really hard for the presenters the shows that they do. And what they wanted was a sense of increasing the listeners that listen to the radio show, but also the listener engagement. So there's the idea that actually they know that people are listening and that actually the radio shows are being streamed, but there's hardly any comments in the website or hardly any engagement from listeners about actually how they found the show or any kind of feedback. So really wanting to increase the publicity of Kintsugi radio show. And also
always every participant, like some of the things not everyone said it, but I think everybody said that like I want people to know what I've done, which is really great.
It's a really helpful, clear target for us, isn't it? Which is great.
And also opportunities for guest appearances, so opportunities to maybe also maybe co-link with other individuals or other projects in the local community.
Can you expand on that, please?
So we had one presenter talked about actually that she was aware that there were various different projects going on around Plymouth, but felt as if they needed to be more, almost maybe allow for more space for links with those other projects within Plymouth, but also advertisement. More
When you say other projects, again, I'm going to push you because I think this is really important.
think about. So I'm thinking about. I don't want to not use her words.
Yeah.
What example does she give?
So I think this was the this is the presenter who did it a lot, who did the show a lot remotely.
Yes.
So the opportunity to kind of maybe have that connection that other presenters might get in the studio, but also bringing other people in, like from you know, a cafe, so maybe presenting from the cafe to do that, linking up with other community projects, with getting guests on as part of different projects, networks, other things like that. I think she found really, really valuable.
Thank you.
And also events. And events. So she talks about Leadwork is Plymouth-based. I know we tend to talk about events happening in Leadworks. I was sort of thinking events surrounding the Plymouth area, maybe sort of getting guests in. So if there's an event on
Brilliant.
Yeah. So
thank you for expanding on that. I get it.
Yeah.
We can work on that.
Yeah. So thinking about what events are happening in Plymouth and actually how do we
make it
co-link it with the Kintsugi and actually bring that other guests in as well in that regard. Expanding.
We can do that. Thank you.
Cool. So the next one, which even though is making it a bit more professional. So I think there was a lot of feedback of we like how it's kind of being more professional. I think there was kind of a bit of a makeover in the studio at the time, things were getting moved around, the damp was going, and kind of having that nice environment felt like would mean a lot to the presenters. So I'm really positive about how things are changing in that direction. So one thing that was picked up on was kind of the Kintsugi radio branding and how all the Kintsugi radio as a radio station, or was it a station, or was it just kind of individual shows? And was there anything that could kind of link things together? So to kind of bring kind of that link, we are Kintsugi radio, what is our identity? Having the individual shows in space, but how could that be done with kind of linking things together, if what they kind of would value some support or some thought going into as well.
Well, that's absolutely fantastic to hear, because without knowing your feedback or the presenters' feedback, we've already done that.
Amazing.
So have you seen our website for Kintsugi Radio?
I think so, but not for a while.
There's a new radio website.
Amazing.
In part linked with this.
Production, like jingles, putting it in simplistic terms that brings the whole thing together.
Yeah.
So
you've read our minds.
So that's really lovely to hear. I didn't know that was going to be the feedback, so that's great.
I think another one is in the midst of from chaos comes growth is actually keeping to timings felt quite important for the presenters as well, especially if presenters were there. Then somebody else was maybe a bit late, and then kind of managing that, not quite knowing what was happening, found a bit difficult. So kind of keeping to timings if something's going to be at this time.
Again, I think Mansell and I, we've already tried to work on that and make sure that there are comfortable times between all the shows, so that nobody feels that there's a knock on the door or somebody's late. But I would, if anybody can hear, encourage you to turn up on time.
So one of the next bit of feedback was kind of just generally growing it to getting more presenters and volunteers involved, letting more people kind of explore and have the opportunity to be a part of the radio.
I think what came out of that was actually some presenters loved when there were other co-presenters in their radio show. So I think wanting more opportunities to kind of develop or have radio shows with other co-presenters within the Kintsugi radio show was something that some of the presenters wanted.
Like group sessions.
Yeah. And also getting kind of new people in, kind of new perspectives, new ideas, new shows, so kind of promoting it so other people can enjoy it and be part of it as well.
And making the venue more accessible.
It's a really good point.
And granted, it's something that maybe it might be completely out of Leadwork's capacity, because I think there was something about disabled parking, and actually I don't think there's any disabled parking, but there might be only one disabled parking bay. That one presenter finds it really difficult in terms of finding parking. But also thinking about actually once the parking has been found and trying to get into the building itself is something that they found difficult. And thinking about actually that although it is accessible, I think there was a feedback that it was accessible, but it wasn't maybe the safest sometimes, so it might be the ramp that was provided wasn't sufficient, or it had to be adjusted according way in a certain way, or the room itself might be one whereby actually they're not able to move around freely. That was from one of the presenters.
We can certainly act on that from the
I've got an idea, and I'm messaging you guys now rather than say it now, because I don't want to say it on camera in case we can't work it out.
Well, we've got a meeting in the week, so...
But there's definitely things, I think, the lip has become much worse into the studio. There's some things that definitely need to be addressed, but we can also think about disabled parking as well.
I just wanted to say something about the environment. I think what came up was that actually one presenter talked about how he wanted maybe more almost like a professional environment, but also thinking about more the equipment and thinking about whether the equipment could be one whereby there is a bit more streamlined instead. I think that was the word he used, whereby if there was better access in terms of the equipment used, it could streamline the radio show and what the production of the radio show. But he also acknowledged that actually there is limitation in terms of finances.
I'd be curious about whether, because I think since the evaluation has carried out, a streamlining of the equipment has taken place.
Yeah,
this was before we got the Mac in, wasn't it?
I think so.
Yes.
I don't want to challenge what you're saying. However, I've worked in radio 35 years. This is the most streamlined radio studio I've ever worked in. And I would struggle to work. So again, it's not a challenge. It's wanting to understand what the ultimate need or question is of the person that's brought that up.
I mean, that was we did this in around September times. I feel like there's been a lot of changes since then. We've got a clip of the person's transcripts that we can have a look at and send to you guys.
It's not a criticism, it's just their...
No, not at all. I'm not being defensive. It's just understanding what a person's looking for.
I think my guess would be that I know sort of before we had a bit of a move around in the studio, we had a lot of equipment out that wasn't always being used. So a big bit of work has been done by Mansa and Gav and others to kind of organise the room and make the equipment better stored, more accessible, and what you actually need on the table.
Are you talking about stuff in the room rather than studio radio equipment?
I mean, from what if I read directly from the person's quote, which I think it might be more, it says radio software that we can use to streamline. It's almost like a podcasting kind of situation, whether it was more of a proper radio.
Yes.
That was this transcript, but also bear in mind this was in September, so it sounds like there's been a lot of changes since
that
then.
makes much more sense.
I think this stuff is really helpful for us to then go back and ask the team, isn't it, as well? So we've made some changes to the setup of the radio. Does this feel streamlined enough? What does that mean? What else can we do to improve that experience for people? Alongside the accessibility stuff as well, because we have moved the room around in a way that we hope will make it more accessible, but it's important to check that out.
Understand exactly.
So check, has that improved accessibility?
That's really great, thank you. And yes, I am planning that it will be more of a constant radio station rather than just odd shows.
Well, before you go, perhaps he'll show you the studio.
Yeah.
There's just the final point you had on there, which I think would be really interesting to discuss.
So this came from it just came from one of the presenters, but he felt quite strongly about it. So yeah, thinking about to what extent disability is incorporated into the radio show. I think this presenter felt that actually the radio show should probably speak for itself. He thought that maybe talking about disability should probably be kind of, is that needed? It's not kind of something I'd want to talk about as a radio presenter because I'm a radio presenter. I wouldn't necessarily want to oh, it's interesting that, oh, we find out later that he's disabled, rather than it kind of be a, like, is this kind of used in the Kintsugi brand? Like, how is that going to be used? And also, like, some people would be, like, from even doing the interviews, would probably quite a bit more comfortable with talking about disability, but for some it might not be. So thinking about kind of how much that is brought in or not to the show, thinking with presenters about that so they feel comfortable and how much kind of they want to disclose and kind of what they want, how that affects their radio show and how it's presented and advertised.
It's a really powerful point, I think.
I think it's the biggest point of all.
Yeah, I think, I mean, in our mind, I think as an organisation, it's Kintsugi Radio is a disabled run, project by disabled people for disabled people to do what they want with. But it's really helpful to have it highlighted that can be an unhelpful angle or information that people might not necessarily want shared or part of the branding. And I think for us as an organisation to move away from that wholly will be difficult. A lot of some of our sort of funding and support sort of relies on us having our kind of mission, what we're doing. But I think there are ways to be thoughtful about that, aren't there, and to think about how that works for each individual presenter and how we think more broadly about the branding for the radio itself.
I think you've just, the word you just said was individual, and maybe when presenters join us, we should address that individually and ask, do they want to talk about it, or do they absolutely not want to talk about it? But I think that's a really good thing for our sort of steering team to discuss next week.
We should probably say, unlike the other themes where there was a consensus, with the recommendation it was very much individualised. So each person had their own. So one person said I want B, someone else said I want C, I want D. So it was very much individualised, so there was no consensus.
Sure.
So it wasn't a case of and the rest were just based on, because we wanted to reflect on actually each individual giving their feedback. The first one is the only aspects where there's a general consensus. The rest are from each individual's perspective. So I think there is something about going back to presenters and saying, actually, how are we doing? What do you need? What do you need? What's working well? What isn't working well? And seeing actually how that's changed from September to now.
So clearly I'm speaking up a bit because I'm a guy that's currently, sort of trying to develop Kintsugi Radio. You've given us a much more in-depth paper, which is fantastic, and I'll read and read and read.